everybody. Today, I have beautiful Hua join us today. We were just talking the other day, and her story was really amazing. She told me all her stories about coming from someone kind of come out of college with basically all these student nets, etc. Get to where they are now. They own great practices in eyewear, like eye doctor. She'll tell you more the details, and then be able to kind of set up a whole business throughout the whole 10 years that they've got. So I thought it was great to have her come on our show to kind of bring a different perspective as an investor, as well as someone who is like really great at building building a business on top of that today. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, Elisa. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Awesome. So we're just going to kind of go back a little bit and, this will be a very free-flowing interviews. I want to kind of get to know your story. So tell us a little bit about your journey. I kind of described a little bit I've been from, but it's always best coming from our guest. Yeah.
Yes. So just a little bit more background, I'm an optometrist with my husband now, but I grew up, I've kind of been around a little bit. I grew up in the Philippines, actually was born in the Philippines, grew up in Germany, and came to the US when I was about 8.5 years old. So that alone has been a journey, and we've traveled quite a bit, but I graduated from optometry school and met my husband there in 2006. So, when we actually graduated, we had close to $300,000 in student loan debt. Wow. But ever since I was really young, even at age 8.5, 9 years old, I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. So even as a child, I was always thinking of, okay, what kind of business would I like to own? And my mom was a business owner, so I learned entrepreneurship at a very young age. But when you come out of college and you have that much student loan debt, my husband and I coming out in the negative, and we come from very, very humble backgrounds, and we had no support system financially in that aspect. So we knew that. So when we graduated in 2006, we met in Houston. That's when I moved over to Dallas. I didn't know a single soul besides, at the time, my boyfriend, which is now my husband. But I took the leap of faith that it was going to work out. I was offered a job position when I was already in my last year in optometry school. So I had a set position to work at a private practice, which has always been my motto of what I'd like to do. And my goal was really, we always talked about owning our own practice. And when we came out with that much student loan debt, the reality of it is no one's going to loan us money to get a practice and start cold. So we knew that we had no option but to really work for someone else to get our feet wet and start, saving money to eventually buy a practice once we get enough money to put a down payment in. So
and how much do these practice cost?
So it is a wide range. So just kind of like apartment investing is based on the NOI or the revenue, the profit margins of what, that's how practices are evaluated. But it's a little bit more difficult evaluating a practice because it's not just the gross revenue and the net revenue and things like that. It's the equipment. It's, how much eyewear, so it's a whole lot of things, the demographic, the location, the building, the size. So there's a lot of different ways to appraise an optometric practice. And it depends on if it's a corporate practice. If you're just subleasing, then it really isn't a whole lot of money to go in. But private practices, which is really what we wanted, and we wanted to go from A to Z, not just have the eye exam portion. So if you do corporate optometry, it's really just leasing the space and doing eye exams. We wanted full scope and really being the owners of doing everything from A to Z, the eye exam, the eyewear, the contact lenses, and pretty much everything that's involved in an optometric practice. So it can range, on average, anywhere from $300,000 up to few $1 million for optometric practices, depending on size and the location of the practices.
So you got the 300K of student debt, and then now you're looking at buying a practice that potentially costs 300 more, just double that debt, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah,
it's, but we knew that's what we wanted to do. And my husband and I knew that when we were in school as students, that the end goal was really to be our own bosses and to be practice owners and practice the way we wanted to. So when we first started out, we had a full-time position. Both of us were fortunate enough to get a private practice offer of 5 days a week. We had a fairly good income, and our salaries grew very rapidly because we were really good at patient rapport and building the practices financially. So we worked at different practices. We grew their revenue quite rapidly.
yeah.
We both picked up fill-in work and extra days. So it was very common for us to work 7 days a week and do stretches of that 21 days straight, take a 1 day break. And I worked every Saturday and Sunday. I mean,
Wow.
Until this day, I still work Saturdays, right?
Wow, you sound like a monster.
And people were like, so I missed out on a lot of the typical parties and celebrations, and Saturday and Sundays, I missed out a lot of different things, but it was 5 years, our goal was always 5 years. We were going to live as frugal as we could and save as much as we can and work as anybody who needed extra work and anything that we could sell or do to have increased revenue. That's what we did. We lived in an itty bitty 1-bedroom apartment in Arlington.
Yeah.
We had a very old car that we still own till this day.
Yeah. I would love a picture of this. Yeah, I would love a picture of it.
Ramen noodles. I mean, you talk about every which way that you can eat ramen noodles. We were very creative and we're very good cooks. So our food was always flavorful. And, the funny thing is people that know us know we're big foodies. But we were very creative on ways of how to save money. With the end goal of knowing that, hey, we're sacrificing our years now at the beginning with really the goal of looking at practices of, buying our own practices.
Yeah.
So my husband was working for a doctor. She promised that she was going to sell us the practice. And because he grew the practice 400%, she decided not to sell to us.
Oh, no. Wow.
So the 5-year mark finally hit, and we finally had enough money saved up that we're like, let's start looking at practices she's not going to sell to us, which was really a blessing in disguise. And we learned a lot through our journey of, if it's not in writing, it doesn't count, right?
Right.
So, we just trusted the doc. We worked. He came in. He renovated the whole practice, his revenue, his free time. But that's all behind us, because another opportunity came up. We looked at lots of different practices. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, our first practice, we came across that, it was location for us.
Right.
So we were able to purchase our first practice in the West Village, uptown area of Dallas. Mm-hmm. It's a very premium, high real estate area, but it's great growing area, young professionals. And I did a lot of research on the areas. We've looked at probably 20 practices prior to actually purchasing that practice. And that's wound up being our practice that we currently have now.
Why did you decide not to go with the other ones?
So the demographics, the location, although we look at all the numbers and tax returns, part of it is also just the traffic flow and the potential of growth. For us, it was big about, walk by traffic, the growth of the area, and our future moving forward kind of potential growth. So it really didn't matter because the doctor that had it there, that we purchased it, he had the practice there for a little less than 10 years, but he's an older doctor, very different practice model. So we saw a lot of opportunity to really grow that practice in an area that we really love.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was the differentiating practice from the other places.
And did you have to kind of bid against other people to get the practice, or
So it's very fortunate. So we're part of, he literally posted it on the day, because we were actively looking every single day.
Yeah.
He literally just posted for sale that practice. We called him that day.
Wow.
And met him the next day and put a deposit down.
Nice. So it's really a speed. So when you see an opportunity,
Yes.
kind of the lesson over here is like you
Right.
plan for that opening, and when you see the opportunity, you seize the moment.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, a lot of other places, a lot of doctors came and called us because they wanted the practice, and they wanted to purchase the practice from us. They're like, how did you look at it and get that practice, that location? Yeah. Everyone has eyes on that,
Right.
It's a very different practice model. And that was another appeal, it was a very different model of practice and very high-end type eyewear place.
Okay.
So it was more like a boutique eyewear collection. So, and I really like that. And so a lot of people.
I know you guys as the luxury eyewear couple.
Yes. So, this, and so that's kind of the standoff, because optometry, I mean, it's very competitive. There's pretty much one in every corner. There's stuff online. I mean, it's a very competitive. So unless you have a different practice model, and you're growing, and around the corner, there's plenty of different opticals around us.
Right.
So having something that's different, and I think is what helped us grow quite a bit.
Yeah. So did you know, like when you set out to do it, this is the type of practice that you wanted to own? Like, is there a set criteria, or you just kind of like, oh, this model could work?
We didn't specifically seek out. We've always wanted something more high-end luxury boutique. But that's not most practice models for optometry,
Yeah.
But we also wanted something we could practice full scope medical optometry.
Okay.
So this gave us the opportunity. He didn't do any medical optometry.
Gotcha.
He was literally just glasses. He didn't really care about contacts. He didn't do medical optometry.
Interesting.
And he was just a good traffic flow with just luxury eyewear.
Yeah.
So luxury eyewear brought people in, but there are so many other services that Jaime and I are really good at. So we brought a lot of new technology, and we started doing full scope medical optometry, in addition to doing high contact lens, a specialty type contact lenses that nobody else was fitting.
Yeah.
So that had helped us. And because he wasn't offering any of those already, that was another practice growth opportunity for us,
Yeah.
And that was why, another reason that practice was very appealing for us. It was kind of quick and easy, it was kind of like come and go. And when we were doing externships, I purposely did 2 externships with private practices, and I picked very doctors that were very prestigious in their field, because I wanted to model them. And then, of course, not model exactly, but I took away what I liked and what I didn't like. Gotcha. And when I came out, and I worked at so many other practices to fill in for them and do extra work, in the DFW area, I've probably worked at least 14 different practices.
Wow.
So I know all the different demographics of DFW. So I learned the different markets. I learned a different patient base. I learned how the staff operate, so I learned a lot of business things while I was working for someone else, with the intent of knowing that I was going to build my own practice, but I took away pieces of what I liked and what I didn't like when I was creating my own practice.
So kind of walk, because I noticed like there is so many kind of surround with like this intent, this burning desire of owning your own practice. Now walk us a little bit back a little bit. How did you just decide? Did you just like one day wake up and be like, I want to own my own practice, or is something leading up to that?
That was when I was at a very young age, because I was always in the entrepreneur, my mom was always in the restaurant business. So I always worked 7 days a week, and that was normal for me. I worked 15-hour days. If I didn't go to school all summer or breaks, it was always working at the restaurant. So
did you hate it at this, like when you're working as like a teenage girl or
well, I knew that was not what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So it motivated me to go to school and do very well in school academically.
Were you forced into that, or like did you?
Well, no, because my dad passed away really young, so it was just my mom raising us, and it was the 3 of us. So it was just automatically, that was the family business. Everybody worked the family business.
Yeah.
And so I helped my mom as much as we could because she didn't speak English, she didn't drive. So I grew up really fast. Teenage years, I spent all of that working in a restaurant. So that was my motivation of like, okay, I knew I wanted to be in the business world. I knew I wanted to have the freedom to be my own boss, very young. Yeah. But I know I didn't want to do that type of business. And I worked a summer job in the optometry clinic, and that's how I got into optometry. And I was like, this is a field that I feel has a lot of flexibility, and especially if I want to have a family, this is a practice and model that I can create for myself.
How did you get that first job in optometry, practice, coming from a young kid that works in the restaurant business?
So when I was a student and I was working, I had a friend who was working at the optometry office, and she referred me in. And that's how I started doing that. And so I was working at my mom's restaurant, and then I was working at the optometry clinic, and then I was going to Tulane at the time. So I was going to school 21 hours, working 2 jobs. Yeah. So I've always been used to a heavy load. Yeah. So coming out of optometry school, working 7 days a week was easy because it was 9 to 5 is nothing for me. For me, I was like 9 to 5 is a breeze, because back in restaurant days, I mean, it's like I'm starting my day at 5, 6 in the morning. We don't finish till 9, 10 at night. Those were 7 days a week. So I was like, man, people talking about 40-hour work week, that's a breeze, 9 to 5, that's nothing. Yeah. But I knew that's not what I wanted to do long term. Yeah. But so being a business owner and a practice owner, I mean, that was always a dream early on, but creating a dream of my own, I was like, my mom had always instilled in me, like, be your own boss. I don't care what you do, whether it's a doctor, whether you're a business, I started my journey in optometry. I wasn't actually starting off as an optometrist when I went to school. I was in business school, So I started off at Tulane doing business marketing and management and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then once I started doing optometry, and I was like, no, I really like this field more. Yeah,
so, And so you would say growing up, installing that entrepreneurship in you, your mom has a lot of influence to it. That's kind of what I hear implying to that. Yes. Yeah.
Part of that.
What are some stuff that she kind of does to you? You feel like looking back, wow, that has a huge impact to my kind of like install that value in me.
Right. Because, for me, seeing her, she never went to college. She never went to school, not even elementary school. Yeah. But she was an extremely, extremely intelligent woman as far as being a business person. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how on earth does she not speak English? Never had a formal education. Yeah. And she'd owned 5 businesses. Wow. And they were small businesses, but it was anything. If she could sell it, she would sell it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So I learned people skills at a very young age. And I grew up in New Orleans, and our first few businesses were in very rough parts of town. Wow. So, we grew up in a corner store selling, just random things, whether it was po' boys or cigarettes or, beer. And it was that kind of setup. But it was that type of business we started off before she grew and did other things,
Yeah.
So, but seeing her hardship, and she never complained, and she was always very happy. So even though financially it was always very tough for us, we were very close bond as our whole family, my brothers and I.
That's awesome.
And she was such a hard worker. So there was no question like that. We were never complaining about like, well, I can't go out and do this with my friends. Right. That wasn't even, it was never part of my, I didn't feel like I missed out per se,
Yeah, I was going to say, because you said you missed a lot on the weekend, but did you really feel like you missed out on these?
Yeah, because, we were always very goal driven at very young. I always had goals and I was very organized, very goal oriented at a very, very young age, very driven pretty early on, just because I was like, I have all the opportunities here where my mom had none, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And Tony Robbins always said this and remind me of that saying. It's like I think the hardships and don't quote me verbatim. It's like the hardship and all these challenges you grew up with. It shapes who you are. It's actually a blessing.
it is a blessing.
And the fact that you have to work all these hours, it really shapes because someone comes in and be like, wow, you work like 7 days straight. That's amazing. And like you said, it's nothing compared to what you came from. And then you're able to kind of take that to like in the next level. That's amazing. So why did you want to own your own practice? Is it mostly because you see your mom own the business, so it's installed in you that I gotta be my own boss? It's just genetically not even an option for you to work for someone.
So, the ultimate goal is aside from building, financial freedom, it's a lot of, I ideally want to build time freedom so I can balance because
Right.
although she was an entrepreneur and I didn't want to work 7 days a week, I didn't want to get to the point where all she did was work and she was never part of my school. She didn't even know what I did in school.
Oh.
She didn't know what ABCDs and F meant.
How did that make you kind of feel?
Because I knew she was in the position where that's what she had to do. So although I wanted to be a practice owner, I wanted to have the freedom of time, which is important to me, which is the hugest part of me of why I didn't want to work for someone else. Because when I did work for someone else for 5 years, the flexibility of trying to request off was difficult too, because it's not as flexible. And although I worked really long hours and built up, because ultimately I wanted to buy my own practice, but today I work 2 days a week.
Wow. Yeah, I saw all these pictures of you like going on vacation, this and that. I was like, man, I want to be in her lifestyle. Yeah.
So people see me now and they're like, oh, they always tease me, you don't work, but they don't know the time commitment, the sacrifices, and what built up to what I have today.
Yeah.
And how we've created systems in place, how we run our practice and are able to travel out of the country very frequently and be okay, and the practice continues to grow, but that takes a lot of effort, time, and learning, and implementing and executing on our team, because now we have great staff and it's leveraged help, that they're fully trained and staffed. So whether we're there or not, things operate. I don't need to be there. If I wanted to leave longer, I don't need to work 2 days a week if I don't really want to.
Right.
But I enjoy optometry. I think I'll always still practice regardless of what type of financial place I am. I actually enjoy that aspect of spending time with my staff and patients. So whether it cuts down to once a day or once a week or once a month, I'll still be doing it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'll request. I was like, when is Hua in office? I'll come over and do the practice. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about like your systemizing, because the one thing that stands up from your story is like, I know, like you said, the practice is all over the place, optometry, and then you are like different than the people who I met in my optometry, like doctor's office, where there's working. It seemed like they were working all the time. But you're able to kind of systemize the whole thing to go free, like you essentially command your time. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of get it started. Is there like some turning point of inspiration that kind of helped you along the way to kind of get that process set up?
So at the beginning, for me, learning all the ins and outs myself and how to do each step most efficiently. So very basic things that most doctors don't do, I did. So whether it's pulling insurances, filing insurances, verifying insurances, pre-testing patients. I mean, I did everything from A to Z that no doctor would do. Ordering from the labs, going through all the lab reports. So because I went through every single process and I know every single position in my practice, whether it's front desk, from scheduling to verifying insurances, to pre-testing, to doing the optical, to ordering contacts, to because I do all of those and I wanted to master those skills myself, I was able to then train my staff exactly how I wanted it done because I can efficiently do each process. So I can't have expectations of my staff to run something and know if they're doing it efficiently if I don't really know that process myself. So not everybody does it that way. It's just that that's how I wanted to do it. So at the beginning, when we first started, we weren't quite as busy yet. So my free time, if I didn't have a patient, I was always learning something within the business of how can I maximize and streamline this and make this more efficient and cut out more people if I can. Is there a system out there? Is there a software out there that I can make this easier? Like recalling patients. Is there a system? Is there a program for that? So I did a lot of research, and my husband's really innovative on that too. So so we complement each other so well. So Jaime is phenomenal with website design, marketing, and technology and researching all of those. So I'm more the detailed admin person, but I had to first do that and then teach my staff exactly how we want it done. So, and we practice that, so whether it's simple things, people don't think it's just scheduling an appointment. No, scheduling an appointment is a point of contact, and that's very important. Every point of contact with a patient and the way it's done is very important. So simple things, so for me to learn it first, and then for me to train and have set expectations of how I want my staff done. And it's systemized, meaning it's written down. So if a new person comes in, everyone does it the same way.
Yeah, gotcha. And then how do you, so you actually started from the beginning when you're doing these tasks, you're actually recording them down, writing them down, each step by steps, and probably also specify and tested different intervals of contacting the contacts and etc. This is amazing because a lot of people do their business and they will repeat the same thing 100 times. I'm guilty of that, and not actually writing it down, so they never can get out of the system. But you were actually doing systemizing everything. And then did you try out the staff? Is certain staff doesn't quite work out? Like, how do you kind of try and arrow that?
So my staff, we hold monthly office meetings, and we did that from the very beginning.
Wow.
So whenever we're doing something, implementing change. So when we came in, it was a lot of changes. So the old staff there, it was paper charts. It was, so we come in, we're going electronic medical records. So we're bringing in a lot of technology. So we're pretty much rewriting and retraining everybody from scratch anyway.
Right.
And for some people, change is difficult. So making sure that everybody was on board and getting the proper feedback. And sometimes it's repetition, and then of course we see, okay, maybe this process didn't work quite as well. Let's try a different technique and see if we can maximize that a little bit better. But as we're doing these monthly meetings, that's when we bring, we started off with 3 staff members, we've grown quite a bit since then, but with the original 3, we still have our original 3 now. We've changed through the course as we've grown and implemented things, but
and then as a small business, I struggle with this of, hey, having the money to pay my staff or having the money to feed my kids, right? So there's obviously that budget as well when carrying $600 or $1 million debt, who knows what going into this. How are you thinking about, like, what are you structured to kind of compensate your staff so that they exude your core values and etc.?
Right. So for us, staff is an investment. So we pay more in the DFW area for our staff than anybody pays by far. But because we have very high expectations and we train them, and their return on our investment in them, we compensate them a base salary structure. We also have a bonus structure for them on growth and opportunities. So, and then we do a lot of team building activities. We do office trips for them annually, so
Yep.
we take them out of the country and we do a lot of team building. Like, so every year we just came back last week from our cruise and we did 6 days, Costa Maya and Cozumel. But because within these trips, it's a lot of team building too. So not just for us. So for us, we spend that extra money. We see what the normal area is. We research what the average salary in our surrounding practices for private practice and things, and we pay higher than that.
Yeah.
And then on top of the salary base being higher than that, although it cuts off some of our profit at the beginning, especially when we're new and we're not quite as busy, I guarantee you that's the best investment we've ever made is that original 3 staff. They have helped us grow that practice in conjunction so much. And now with our second. So they are they go out and promote the practice. They stay and do the extra mile. So I don't see that as like, well, how does that work out? If I have to cut my portion on something and I have to work extra, that's fine, but I'm not going to cut there. But my budget is going to allow a little bit more for payroll for my staff.